Well, our next guest may be more focused on the core business than the stock price, but his shares have more than tripled this year. Talking about Docusign, the company's earnings came out ahead of analyst estimates, sales up 53% year over year. Let's bring in Dan Springer. He is CEO of Docusign. Dan, seeing a lot of growth year over year, and I don't know if it's even possible to tease it out, but how much do you attribute to the changes that we have seen because of the pandemic versus just the growth that you've seen overall in the digitization of documents?
Yeah, it's a big question. A lot of people have been trying to get their handle on, including us. And when we try to take a look at the use cases that are very specifically driven by this horrible pandemic, it's a relatively small number of them. We think what's actually happened is the pandemic, though, has created a perspective in a lot of companies that they need to drive their digital transformation much more significantly. And that's why we're really bullish that while there's definitely been a nice tailwind from, again, the horrible pandemic, but it's a very sustained tailwind that will take us forward many years into the future.
Dan, do you think the pandemic, we've talked a good bit in the past about this, do you think the pandemic will have finally ended paper? Why do we need paper?
Well, it's funny. I think about this all the time when people talk about Docusign, and it's very significant success we've had in growing the business. But from a penetration standpoint, paper is still doing pretty well. If you think about the TAM, we think about just for the e-signature as opposed to the overall agreement cloud, but just for e-signature, it's over a $25 billion TAM that we see. And if you think about, we have about 2/3 of the market, most analysts seem to think, and we'll be pushing up on $2 billion in revenue in the coming year. That's still a very small penetration. So paper's still got a lot. And I'll give you a use case. The other day, I bought a new Tesla. And of course, you can do that entire experience of buying your car online. But I went to pick up the car, and the associate there handed me a clipboard and said, here's some forms we want you to fill out around registering your vehicle. And I thought to myself, if Tesla still has paper in their process, it makes you just realize how many more opportunities there are for us to grow.
Well, and Dan, related to that, Julie Hyman just bought a house. I'm in the process of doing so myself. A lot of Docusign in that process these days. But I don't think there would have been 9 months ago, right? We would have been sitting in, agent's office or a lawyer's office and all that. Now, that kind of stuff has come up because it had to, right? It's not safe for everyone to gather in that kind of space. The insurance business, another area that you guys flagged, has had a lot of transformation in the last few months. Do you think those businesses, though, want to go back to the face-to-face, the hand-to-hand agreement, as it were? Or do you think that, speaking of TAM, I guess, do you think that changes those sort of processes forever?
The future is very difficult to predict, for sure. But one thing I have a high degree of confidence is when people get the benefits of going from a paper and manual-based process and moving forward to a digital process, they don't go back. They don't go back because the benefits are so strong. Their customer experience is better. Their employee experience is so much better. They usually save a significant amount of money by taking costs out, like the travel to bring those agreements to people or FedExing those documents to folks. And then the time that they save is so dramatic. So people aren't going back once they've had the digital taste.
So I'm curious now, should we expect a Tesla Docusign contract at some point in the near future after you had that experience?
Yeah, I hope we'll do more with Tesla. They're a great company, and I love their products. And they use Docusign, and I'm sure there's opportunity for us to expand that relationship into the future.
So Dan, I'm curious about your moat here, because it's one of the places where Docusign has really, if I can say from a consumer perspective, has become synonymous with doing what you do. And there doesn't seem to be, from the consumer perspective, a lot of competition. But is that something that you're concerned about down the road?
Well, it's interesting. I think from a standpoint of competition, we tend to think about paper really, and manual process, as I said, as the core competition because it's so early. Most of the work we do is greenfield expansion as opposed to thinking about trying to take share from someone else. But we think about competitive dimensions a lot when we think about the overall agreement cloud. So just in signature, I think we feel very strong about that competitive position. But in the overall agreement cloud, there's going to be a lot of different players that come in, and we think it's going to be a big category. So we will definitely be focused on competition. From a standpoint of worrying, your question is interesting, worrying about not having competition, there's one component around that, which is complacency. And when people ask me sort of what keeps me up at night, a lot of times I say it's making sure that at Docusign we keep that just tenacious focus on driving customer success, which allows us to win in the marketplace. And so as long as we don't get complacent, I'm not concerned that we'll have sort of challenges, from a competitive dimension.
Dan, Docusign recently integrated deeper with Slack. An interesting collaboration there. How do you think the acquisition of Slack by Salesforce changes what you do with Slack?
Yeah, very little in this case because we're actually customers of, and we use their products on both sides, both dimensions there with Slack and with Salesforce. And now we've always had a big sort of go-to-market partnership with Salesforce. And as you said, we just built the integration with Slack, where we realized that we want to make the agreement cloud available to companies and customers wherever they are. And so we were excited to use that opportunity. But I think that those sort of motions are off to a great start. And I think the integration of those two strong firms will, if anything, sort of deepen our core partnership. We are big fans of what each of them are doing and excited about what they might do together. And it's excited to have our neighbors. I'm literally looking at the Salesforce tower here and the Slack headquarters building right there. And Docusign headquarters is a block behind me that way. So it's fun having the neighborhood full of great partners.
And not a bad place to be there. What do you for the first time in a while, I mean, you talk about this a lot on your earnings calls, but maybe more so this last one, international. You are seeing very strong growth there. What countries are you seeing growth?
So we have a concept called the Focused 8, and we've sort of said to ourselves, let's make sure we do a fantastic job at those top 8 countries, and then we have a long tail across the rest of them. And remember, because we have a digital business, DocuSign has customers in over 150 countries. But the core 8 for us, what we're most excited about, obviously the US, we've got Canada, we've got France, we've got Germany, we've got the UK and Ireland, we've got Brazil, we've got Australia, New Zealand, which obviously 2 countries, but we think about as one space, and then Japan. And those are the 8 countries that we're most invested in and most excited about, that are driving that 77% annual growth we had quarter over quarter, or annually from the third quarter last year.
And Dan, finally, you mentioned you can see the Salesforce tower. I want to ask broadly about the Valley right now and sort of what the energy is like out there, considering kind of all the cross currents going on, right? You have so many companies right now that have gone public and just had amazing results. The market is kind of enamored with this latest trend or this latest generation, I'd say, of Silicon Valley companies. And at the same time, you hear everyone's leaving San Francisco, everyone wants to live in Austin, and so on and so forth. What's it like being out there, and sort of where do you see the next iteration of Silicon Valley going, on the other side of the pandemic?
It's sort of interesting over the last 20 plus years that I've been here, working in the Valley in the tech space. Every several years, there's this phenomenon where people say, it's over, everyone's leaving, it's not cool to be in the Bay Area anymore, young people don't want to be here, and sort of the core driving of the technology space is going to move. I haven't seen that ever come to fruition, and I don't think it's going to come to fruition now. I think we'll have these little blips along the way, like we did after the dot-com crash, right after 2001. And I think we're seeing that today. We're seeing some folks saying, it's expensive to live here, and they're going to look at opportunities to be in other markets. But I think the Valley is going to stay as the epicenter of the tech industry for the world, definitely for my professional lifetime. And I'm pretty bullish. I think what you articulate when you look at how much sort of new generation of businesses occurring, how much success the technology as an industry is delivering to entrepreneurs today, and that is still very centric here in the Bay Area. I think it's going to be a super attractive place to be.
Interesting. All right, Dan Springer, Docusign CEO. Thanks for stopping by today and spending some time with us. Appreciate it.
Always great to see y'all.